Welcome to the Horse Connection podcast with Natasha Albert and Emma Beasley, where we will be exploring how we can create harmonious partnerships with horses. We'll chat about building our emotional intelligence and practicing holistic horsemanship with horses as our guides. So if you're looking for authentic connection to yourself and horses, this is the place for you. Let's get started. So today we're going to be talking about connection and what connection really means. So the relationship between ourselves and others, and also horses and how we interrelate.
Yeah, definitely. I think with connection, the horses really have a lot to help support us with when we're working with them, or if we're just looking to develop our own awareness of how we connect with other people.
Yeah, I think they give such immediate, feedback, and they respond to our body so quickly and so accurately. We can really tell so much that's kind of showing up in ourselves and also showing up in the horse. If we are sensitive enough to notice, for example, I know when I'm teaching people about how to be aware of layers of engagement in terms of, when you're approaching a horse and when you're approaching a person, for example, noticing, how do they respond in their body? Yeah. Is there a flick of an ear, or does someone look towards you? You can know that they've noticed you. And so almost like that's the first exchange.
Yeah.
And so
that idea of personal space as well, isn't it? Like we all know that person that gets right on your shoulder and makes you feel a bit uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And then, taking a moment just to pause and acknowledge that, the first response, and then going up and going a bit closer and really noticing, what's the comfort zone of a conversation and a dialogue. And as you were saying, people can get right up close in your face, and you can sometimes get really up close with a horse.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a real relationship piece with it, isn't there? So, like with people, there's certain people, like yourself, I sit close to you and I feel comfortable and everything's fine. But in another environment, that would make I'd feel instantly a bit uncomfortable. My body would tense up. My breathing might go shallow. And I think those feelings are very useful to be aware of when we are with our horses.
And also with other people.
And with other people.
Because it's like knowing what the sweet spot is. And I do, teach people about how to identify this in sessions. But it's the sweet spot, or the layer of engagement, is really noticing the amount of space you need between yourself and another person, or yourself and a horse. And it's going to be different. As you were saying, Emma, the relationship can differ because, I know, with one of my ponies, Skylar, the layer of engagement is quite typically quite close to her, whereas someone like Delios, he needs quite a lot of space to be able to engage really comfortably.
Yeah.
And even between us, we can sit quite closely and have a really good combo, can't we? And then, with other people, might need a bit more space. So it's recognising the space, that space is the place.
Space is the
place.
place.
And it's like where you need to be to really hear each other and get your needs met and heard, and also from the other side, whether it's the horse or a human, for them to be able to reach you.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly where, when you're working with horses on the ground particularly, where you can get a real benefit from. So if you're in a place where you can develop that relationship, where they understand that you are respecting their space and you are hearing them, seeing them, you kind of get a different relationship going, because in a herd environment, that's what they rely on, that everyone kind of knows where everybody is. So by finding that sweet spot, as you say, with your own horse, you can start to have a different dialogue with them, communication that's a little bit more two-way, rather than you kind of saying, I want you here, I want you there, and the horse not really having a choice. So It's a bit of a weave of sort of
Absolutely.
choice
Yeah.
and relationship. And I think when we hear that kind of word connection, depending whether it's human or horse environment, everyone's a little bit like, oh, what does that mean? Yeah.
And I think for me, it's really a space where you can communicate effectively.
Yeah.
And
100%.
it's like honouring your comfort levels of communication to be heard and received. And I think the best way to do it with people and with horses is when you're not in such a contained space. For example, you've got the space that you need, and then it's at liberty basically, so that you can really identify where is that. Is the horse starting to move away? Is it starting to move inwards? Is a person's body language looking away? You're like really too much in their space. Are they kind of hovering by the door to say, actually, I need to like leave, or are they kind of looking inwards more towards you at a point of engagement where they're like, oh yeah, actually, this is a great amount of space, and I'm turning towards you because I want to start to engage with you. And I think that really goes into boundaries. Boundaries are honouring our comfort levels and what feels good to us.
Yeah, completely. I think with when you're working in that environment at liberty, it can be really useful. With groundwork, it can be equally as useful because you're not always in a situation where you can be at liberty safely, or just, I know there's a lot of yards that aren't happy with horses being let loose in arenas and things, so there's a lot you can do on a line as well, and feeling that connection down the line can almost be as useful as being loose with the horse as well. You can still help.
And actually, my mentor, who I trained with, Linda Karnoff, she developed one of the exercises that I teach about the layer of engagement with her stallion, Midnight Merlin, when he was a very over kind of like sensitised and traumatised stallion, and he was kept in a stall, and she couldn't get near him, and he was kind of very kind of perhaps like aggressive or not safe to be around. So actually she developed this exercise, which was kind of knowing how to approach him in stages, and every time there was a response in his body, taking a moment to breathe and to stop,
let him
and to just stop and acknowledge it. And when she still met the layer of engagement, probably meters before actually going to the stable, and that was when she could actually communicate with him, and he felt heard, and she felt that she could have a conversation effectively, and she did that for a while, and then move the conversation, move the relationship on, just because they could actually hear each other rather than kind of tying the horse up, getting in the stable, and then having a really terrible time. And it's the same with people, kind of someone who needs a bit of space, a bit of more space, or setting boundaries with each other to say, oh, that's not gonna work for me right now, but can we make a time to chat later? Or I'd really love to talk to you, but can we do this another time? And creating space and healthy boundaries, however that looks like, just to honour your own needs, honour the horse's needs, and honour other people's needs, because it's not just us who can set boundaries, it's other people and horses that can set boundaries too. So it's a two-way interaction. It's like honouring other people's and horses' boundaries, but also honouring your own boundaries.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that two-way dialogue is really important, because horses rely on some feedback from you as well as you asking a question of them. So it has to, that's where you get the reciprocation from them.
Yeah.
So if you're doing work in hand and help people with this, because a lot of times just walking a horse along with a horse leading them can actually be quite challenging, depending on where they are in their bodies, where the horse is in their bodies, and that sense of developing that communication is all tied up with how we are in our bodies and where we put our intention.
Absolutely. It's really getting clear what feels good to us and what feels good to another or a horse.
Yeah.
You know, it's about being really clear, and that goes into like boundary setting, being really clear with our needs and the needs of others, and seeing how we can form a connection and a relationship with that.
Definitely.
And, you know, I think extending that into feel. And we were talking, weren't we? We were saying, what is feel?
What is feel? Yeah, because I think it's a word that
kind of
it
term,
is a horsemanship term, and I think it's one that, you know, it can be when you say, oh, you need to, you know, develop your feel with your horse or whatever. It can be a little bit like everyone's like, oh, the magic feel.
How do I define that? Feel?
So for me, when I'm helping people, you know, if we use the term develop a feel with your horse, I think it's very much about the two-way relationship thing. So as soon as you've picked up a rope or a pair of reins or anything that's connecting you to the horse, it's being able to have a sense of two-way movement, so that you don't have that brace. Because as soon as you get a tightness or a brace or a tension, as you know, you're bringing up a sense in your own body, in the horse's body, where you've almost blocked a conversation happening.
Yeah.
So I think for me, feel is about how we maintain a dialogue with our horse. So if we were asking them to go to the left, what that's feeling like in terms of where our body's moving, where our breath's moving, where our intention's going.
Yeah.
And can the horse feel that from us to help them say, oh yeah, you know, I want to come along with you that way. Or so for me, it's feel is a conversation.
Yeah, I really hear that, and I think feel for me is, you know, it's similar. It's noticing where is the energy moving to, and where would you like it to move to, and just kind of almost having an interplay with that kind of energy with the horse. And it's just going into like the energy fields, like, oh, it's kind of moving away, like the feel, or the horse is like moving out. You know, what can I do to try and meet that energy and pull that towards me? So it's like noticing where the energy points are, like quite physically, but also energetically. Because as soon as you start thinking something, it translates in your body language as to where you'll turn, and the same, it will like have a response, like mirroring for the horse where that horse will turn. So it goes back to the same principles, isn't it, about relationships, boundaries, intentions, feel, connections, layers of engagement.
They're all interweaved. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sounds amazing. I think as humans, we always second guess ourselves, don't we? And it's that second guessing and not listening to our gut instinct that can cause confusion with the horses. And I see this a lot with when I go and help people with groundwork.
It goes into confidence.
Confidence.
Being assured of yourself.
Absolutely.
Because we all know the answers deep down. And the horse knows the answers deep down.
And the humans do. So as soon as you sort of empower somebody, you know, whether it's groundwork or ridden work, as soon as I empower them and say, you know, you're doing great, believe in what you're doing, trust your instinct on where you're going with it. And you almost see like a light bulb come on. You see the horse change, because the horse goes, they're a bit, I've got you. I understand where you're going with this now. So it's in terms of sentient communication, you've sort of responded to your body, and what you're feeling has been acknowledged, and the horse they recognise it every time.
And
it's
our
really
guts
interesting.
are like. There's loads of articles about how our guts and our hearts are almost like another brain for our body.
Another brain.
Huge information resources for our body. And just trusting your gut, you know, what's the quick response? It's like, oh, is that right? Should I, you know, jump that? Should I take the dog for a walk right now? Should I, you know, cook this meal? Should I make a choice? Take a job? It can be anything.
Just believing in yourself.
And it's really just like, what's the information? What's it feel like? Because everyone knows the answers deep down. And I think that's a really powerful place to kind of, you know, leave you with that thought as well, that we all have huge resources in our body. You know, just recapping on breath, heart, guts, feelings, so much more. And I really invite you all just to go into checking in with your bodies and honouring the importance of your own feelings.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I think if we can do that in our own bodies and then recognise it in the horses, so that, you know, the horses have so many different layers of body language that they communicate with us. If we can harmonise those two things, I think it would really help with relationship building across the board, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Horse Connection podcast. We've really loved having you here. For ridden and groundwork coaching, connect with Emma on socials at Another Way Equestrian. For therapeutic horsemanship and emotional coaching, connect with Natasha at naturalwithhorses.com. So until next time, may the spirit of the horse be with you.